The goal for the session today is to show you how to create a package proposal template that's ready to send out to your clients so you can start using it. There are two things that it does help to be familiar with, and just for sake of time, we won't really deep dive into everything that has to do with packages or with invoicing, because we could do completely separate webinars on that if we wanted to. But it does help to be familiar with how packages work and how invoicing works in Dubsado. We'll talk a little bit about it. It'll be sprinkled in there, but we're going to primarily focus on the proposals. So in order to do what we're going to do today, you'll basically just need two things. You'll need your package templates built, and you'll also need a contract template. So those are the two things that you'll definitely need to have in order to do what we're going to do today. So if you don't have those things built, I always recommend go into your system and build those things first. Set up your packages, your services, the things that you offer, and then also build your contract template, and then you'll be able to accomplish what we're going to do today. So the very first thing that I want to talk about is the purpose of a proposal and what it's designed to do. The purpose of a proposal is to generate an invoice. That's plain and simple. That's what it's designed to do. You pitch your pricing to a client. They say, yes, this looks great, whether it's a package proposal or it's custom, but they look at the proposal. They say, this looks excellent. I want to work with you. And then an invoice gets generated based off of whatever it is that they chose, or whatever it is that you've designed for them. It's going to generate an invoice. That's the whole point of a proposal, is to get to the pricing portion of things. So when the proposal is submitted, any packages that the client has selected will automatically be added to their invoice. So we're going to actually take a look at this in real time, so you'll be able to see exactly what that sequence looks like. But that's how the proposal template works there. As soon as they submit that, it will go on to the invoice. So let's jump into Dubsado here. Let me open this up. And we're going to be looking at the proposals here in this section inside of Dubsado. So I'm underneath forms over here, and then proposal. Just in case you're brand new to Dubsado, I want to kind of get you oriented to where I'm at here. Sometimes I think that I'm just talking to people who have used the system for a long time, but I have to remember that we do have newcomers into these webinars. So I'm in the template section under forms, and then looking at the proposal here. So I have a few examples, but we're mainly going to look at two today. If I click into the package selection proposal, we'll talk about how to construct these and how to build these. What sets proposals apart from any other form is the fact that you can add your packages onto this form. How you can think about it as a business owner is your packages are going to be like food items that are on a menu. When you go to a restaurant, you look at the menu and you can see all the different food items that are offered there. That's what your packages are. They could be a la carte items. They could be add-ons. They could be a bundle of items, all those different things, but it's basically what you are serving or what your services are or products. So once you create those packages, then when you come to the proposal, you'll notice over here on the element chart, and we've been talking about this throughout this series about the different elements that are available. On the proposal, the package element right here is exclusive to this form. No other form has packages on here. So that's what you can think about whenever you're building. Packages go onto your proposal, and you can think about the proposal as the menu and how you're going to give your pricing to your client. So if you take a package element, you can simply click and drag it onto this form. And what you'll see here when you click and add it on here is it will be an empty package element. So there's nothing inside of this package element. It's empty. What you can do is when you click on this, it's going to open up a little side window here. And what you can do is you can select from any of the packages that you have created. So when you create your packages, which it helps, as you can see, if you have those built beforehand, you take your packages and then you can assign which package is going to go with this select button over here. So that's what the main purpose of the proposal is to drag those packages onto your form. And as you can see here, I have 3 different wedding packages that are popping up here. So I put those in there and I can add in the different things that I want to say about each one. But all these are different package elements that I've put onto this form. If I scroll down a little bit further, you'll see I have add-ons that I can put in here. So packages don't have to be a bundle of items. They can be add-ons, a la carte items, all of those different things. A lot of newcomers to Dubsado kind of get hung up on the word packages because they might say, well, I don't really have packages. You might. It's anything that has a fixed price point to it or has a dollar amount to it that you can create a baseline for, and then you can add on to proposals. So that's that there. So you'll basically take those packages, you'll drag those on there. One thing I do want to mention, I want to make sure I hit everything here. The column element, and we'll talk about this here, the column element, you can use that to change the layout of your form. So if you look at this proposal, you'll see that there is this big box around here. That's actually a column element up here at the top where you can change the layout. So instead of everything being one after another, you can split your proposal into different columns, whether it's 2 columns, 3, or 4. Those are the different column widths that we have. So feel free to use that column element to kind of spice up the layout of your form. Obviously, this one is kind of in a 3-tier type process, but you don't have to use it this way. If you have 15 different packages and you want to put them in different places, you can do that. So feel free to customize it however you would like to. But that's how you'll get the packages on there. Okay, so we'll keep moving through here. The next thing that you're going to do as well is you're also going to add in your branding aesthetic. So what I usually recommend people do with that is to add in images. You can put images on this form. The text that you'll put on here should mirror how you speak to clients and basically show your branding to the client. There's a lot of people that I've talked to that kind of skip over the aesthetics point. They just want to put together a proposal really quickly and then just send it out. But it does help to take time to build this out so it looks really great too, because this is basically you pitching yourself. So you want this to look great. So take time to build this and make it look really great. Add in some images, put the different text and things like that on there. You can use that columns element to kind of change the layout, but then add your aesthetic on here. Put your logo at the top if you would like to with the image element, but you can spice up the design of the proposal once you get your packages in there. Okay, so the next thing, just kind of moving through here, that is basically how you'll build your proposal. That's the only thing that kind of separates the proposal from other forms is the package element portion. All of these other elements, so short answers, drop downs, all of those different things, you can find those on other forms. But the main thing I wanted to talk about was the package element because that's exclusive to this form. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take this proposal and we're going to take it to the next level. So what makes the proposal also really special is you have the ability to add a contract and the invoice that gets created from the proposal. You can add all that together in a sequence. So what that means is you can send this proposal out to a client. They can sign a contract and sign off on whatever it is that they're interested in. And then they can make a payment based off of whatever it is that they chose. So what you're doing is you're stringing all that together into one sequence. And that eliminates a lot of the back and forth that you would have with a client. Send them a proposal. Once they send that back, then send them a contract. Then once they send that back, then an invoice. We want to cut out a lot of that back and forth because it creates friction from them buying. So with the proposal in the settings menu here, we'll click on the settings menu at the top. And the first thing we'll talk about is the proposal options. So here is where you can add in a contract and the invoice to go with that particular proposal. You don't have to do this. That is one thing that I want to stress here is that you don't have to do a contract and an invoice. You could do just proposal and contract and then send the invoice out later. You could do proposal and invoice where you might have them sign a contract later. You can make whatever combination works best for your business, but it's helpful to know that those things are there. So I have the proposal, contract, and invoice connected. The other thing I want to talk about here is the box here for allow client to choose multiple packages. If you have add-ons or you need them to select more than one package, then you have to have that checked, or else they will not be able to do that. That's going to be most situations. If you have add-ons, you want them to be able to choose multiple packages. But there are certain situations where you might have, let's say we go to this proposal here, and let's say I don't have any add-ons on this proposal. I just have 3 wedding packages for them to choose from. In that scenario, I wouldn't want them to be able to choose more than one. I don't want them to get 2 and 3. I just want them to pick one. So in that situation, it kind of varies between businesses and what your proposal looks like. But that option is there for you to decide if you want them to choose multiple or just choose one. So in this case, we want to have that on. And then the last thing, or I guess we'll talk about 2 more things here, and then we're actually going to talk about what this looks like live and how to send this to a client and all that good stuff. So the other thing that you can do with a proposal is you can add a payment schedule to go in here. Now with payment schedules, this is going to be where you can basically tell the client once they make their purchases, how you want them to pay. Do you want it to be 50-50 where they pay the first amount up front and then the second amount at a later time? Have you created a payment schedule that might be 34, 33, 33? You could do a pay in full. You can put a payment schedule on here to basically tell your client when you want them to pay. And this will make a lot more sense once we look at this live. But this is going to break the invoice down at the end into 2 different payments for them. And then the last thing that you can do is you can also add discounts. Discounts is also in the packages section. We won't dive into discounts today, but if you want to add a discount on there, it would be available for them. And I'm going to leave this on so that way you can at least see how someone could pay or add a discount in at the end. So I'll leave this on there for you so you can see it, but you are able to add those in there in the settings menu. Perfect. So I have a couple things here before we jump into the proposal sequencing so you guys can see that live. There is not a way to have different contracts generate based off of the package selection. We don't have that capability. You have to preset a contract into your proposal. The thing that you can do though is you can add smart fields into your contract so that once the proposal gets submitted and an invoice gets generated, it can have something to put on that contract. So before we go in and do this live, I'll show you what I mean by putting invoice smart fields in your contract so that it will populate the right way. The other thing too that I want to mention is that you cannot, that you have to preset a payment schedule. You can't have a payment schedule generate based off of a different package. We also don't have that ability yet. So what that means is if we were doing this proposal here, and let's say that package 1 has a different payment schedule than package 3, what you would have to do is in your settings, you would not have them show the invoice. You wouldn't want them to make a payment because you have to apply the right payment schedule. So what you would do is you would send out the proposal maybe by itself first. And then once they submit it, you'll look at the invoice, see what they purchased, and then add that correct payment schedule onto that invoice and then send them the invoice after. So we don't have that capability yet. That should be coming in the future where you can have different payment schedules. But right now you have to preset which one you want it to follow regardless of what they're purchasing on this proposal. So that's an important thing. It might affect how you do your contract and invoice with them as far as process goes. So now what I want to do here really quickly is I want to take a look at the contract that's attached so you guys can at least have a back end visual of what's happening when you see this live. So on this contract that I have, and this is just the sample contract that comes with your account, inside this section here, you'll see if we open this up that there are invoice smart fields that are in this section here. What an invoice smart field does, I'll click on smart field and then go to the invoice tab here. All of these smart fields are going to look at the invoice that's created on the project, and it's going to autofill information from that invoice. And so basically, just so you know what's going on in the background, is I've added in these smart fields so that way when we get to the contract portion, it's pulling from whatever I selected on the proposal because it generated an invoice, and it's placing it on that contract. So that's the correlation that you guys will be able to see when we get there, but that's what it looks like on the back end. I just use these invoice smart fields to pull whatever they select from the proposal is going to paste onto the contract. So that's how you can basically avoid maybe needing multiple contracts depending on package selection. You can create more of a generalized contract and then let the invoice smart fields really give you the customization aspect to it or the specifics of it. So let me save that here. And now we're going to go into a project, and I want to show this to you live on how this is going to work. So before we do that, though, I want to explain what happens with proposal sequencing so you guys will be able to follow along. So let me open this up here and I'll talk through this for you. So there's two different views basically. There's the front end view, that's what the client is going to see or what the client is going to experience. And then there's the back end view, what happens inside of the project, behind the scenes, what the client can't see. So these are the two different views and what's happening at the same time. So I'll break this down for you on what's going on. When you put a proposal in a project and you're sending that proposal to the client, as soon as that goes into the project and you're going to send it out, it's going to create an empty invoice inside of your project. Anytime that that proposal goes in there, you'll see an empty invoice get created on the back end. What that's doing is it's basically just creating an empty invoice so that once they fill out the proposal, it's going to put their selections on that empty invoice. So it's basically just prepping for when they're going to actually put their proposal selections together. So as soon as one happens, two happens. So it's happening at the same time there. Okay. Then once the proposal gets submitted, so once they make their selections and they submit that proposal, whatever selections they had are going to go on to that empty invoice in your project. Those things are happening at the same time, okay? So that happens together. Then once they get to the contract portion, remember, an invoice is created back here on 2 and 4. The invoice is ready to go. So that's how it knows on the contract what numbers to pull onto that contract, because the proposal section 1, 2, 3, and 4 created the invoice that you're going to have on the contract as far as information is concerned. Then from there, when they get to the invoice, all that it's doing is taking the invoice that got created on the back end and it's just showing the invoice to the client. So it's just basically a shopping cart at the end where they can see what's going on. So if you want to know kind of what's going on front end, back end, this is a representation of what's happening both for the client and for you as the business owner. And then I have a little diagram up here just so you realize it's what we already talked about, but these two connected is what's going to bring in that contract and invoice. So hopefully that makes sense for you, but that's how everything is happening as far as kind of a mind map is concerned. So let's jump into Dubsado here, and we're actually going to look at what that does live so you can put the correlation together. So I have a project here, Rachel Green. You can see Rachel and Ross, big Friends fan. So I have Rachel and Ross here, and when I click on this, they're getting married June 12th of 2021, let's say, okay? So we have their wedding date here. We want to send out a proposal to them. I have my wedding package proposal. We're going to send that out to them so that they can make a purchase on what they want, okay? So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the Forms tab here, and I'm going to grab my proposal. So if I click this drop down, here is my proposal template. So I'll click on that, And that's going to open up a little preview here. So it's, hi, Rachel, please select a main package from the options below. We got all this good stuff in there. It just shows you a quick preview. Now, when you click add, and this is great for anyone who's a newcomer into Dubsado, I always like to take a pause here to explain what this does. When you click add, it's going to create a copy of your master template and add it into this project. So that means that if you need to make changes and make edits on this form before you send it out, it's only going to change the proposal in this project now. I'm no longer messing with my master template anymore. This is a copy of it that's in this project here, okay? So before we go in and before we look at the actual sequence of things, I want you guys to see one thing. If I exit out of this preview window, I want you to see what has happened in the project. Once I added this proposal into the project, it doesn't go out to the client right away. It's just sitting here in this project waiting to be sent. So as you can see, the badges on here say needs sending. It's just sitting here. So with this, that means I can still make edits if I want to. I can still make customizations in here before I send it out. The other thing I want you to see is that it's also added the contract into the project, so you don't have to manually add the contract because it's connected with that contract and invoice. It's already in here. So I don't have to worry about that. The other thing, going back to our diagram that we looked at, is now if you look at the invoices section, here's that empty invoice that we talked about. So we added the proposal in there and it created this blank invoice in here, basically prepping for when they're going to fill it out. The 50/50 payment schedule that you saw that we added in there, it already has it down here at the bottom. It's already prepped and ready to go. So just by bringing the proposal in, it basically gets everything set up and now we're ready to go. We can send the whole bundle out to the client, okay? So that's how you can think about what's going on the back end. So this is 1 and 2 in that diagram. So now let's actually show you what happens when a client does this. So if I go to the forms here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to have to switch screens here just based off of big marker. I'm going to have to switch screens so you guys can see the client view. So just bear with me here. But what I'm doing, and you guys can use this method if you are testing things out. If you click copy link up here at the top, and then go up to your browser and open up an incognito window. So in Chrome, it's called an incognito window underneath file. If you're on Safari, I believe it's called a private window. So you can open up a private or an incognito window and then paste the link in there and it will open it up like you're the client. So that's what we're gonna do here. So I'm going to open up an incognito window. I'm gonna paste the link. I'm pretty sure you guys aren't able to see this, but let me pop back over to big marker here, and then I'm gonna switch screens so you guys can see here. Let me pop this open, should be this one. So now you guys should be able to see the proposal, contract, and invoice. So this is what it's going to look like for a client. Let me jump back over here. So when a client receives this, because you have the contract and the invoice together, across the top, you'll see all of these tabs. That's what combining all those things does, is it puts it into this 3-tier sequence. So now let's just pretend I'm Rachel. I'm getting the proposal. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to say, okay, I want to do wedding package 2. And then I also want to do, we'll just say 3 hours of additional photography work, or we'll do 4 hours, let's say. So as you can see down here at the bottom, it's generating a total based off of what I'm choosing on here. It's just like Amazon or a shopping cart where they're basically building their invoice, and it's going to have a running total down here at the bottom so the client can always see it, okay? So they'll go through, they'll make their selections on what they want. Boom, this looks great. I have everything I want. Then they'll click submit and next, and it will take them to the next tab, which is the contract. So now we're at the contract stage of things, and I'm going to scroll down here so you can see what those invoice smart fields did. So now I had one generic sample contract. It wasn't geared towards any service that I have, but what makes this contract unique is those invoice smart fields are now pulling in what I selected on that proposal because we have an invoice now. So if I were to jump back into Dubsado and go to the invoice tab, you would see a completed invoice now. The selections would be on there. So now I have this here. It has the total. It has the pricing on there. It's based off of what they chose. My payment schedule, it tells them September 18th today. This amount is due, and then a week, I think, or maybe it's 3 days before the wedding, the other amount is due. So it has my payment schedule in there, and that's all from Invoice Smart Fields. So from here, we'll scroll through. Yes, this looks awesome. I love it. I'm ready to go. So now I'm going to sign myself as Rachel Green and we'll put that in there so the client can go ahead, they can sign, and then we'll click agree and next at the bottom. And then that's going to take me over to the invoice once this contract processes. So what's happening is they did the proposal, contract, and then once my computer loads here, it will take them over to the invoice. So 1 second while it loads up here. Okay, perfect. So now we're on the invoice page here. And now everything that was created, so we did the proposal that made the invoice in the background. Now we're just showing it to the client. So you can see all of the different things that I have on there that's populated. So it shows the tax. If you have tax on things, everything's written out. And now the payment schedule is down here. So what the client can do is they can click pay now. And if they want to make a payment for their deposit, it makes it easy there if you have your payment processor set up. They can click that, they can pay, boom, you're good to go. Maybe they'll put down a 20% gratuity, who knows, but they'll be able to make their payment there once you get your processor set up. So they can make a payment here, or if they're feeling generous, they can click pay now down here and they can pay for the whole thing up front if they want to. With an invoice, I'll just preface it with this. You will always have this down here, the pay in full. There's not a way to remove the pay in full option. That's always down there at the bottom. The payment schedule, if you have one, that will get added in, but this will always be down here at the bottom. Whatever the remaining amount on the invoice is will always be down here at the bottom. And as you can see, I have my discount code area. So if you do apply a discount, that's what it will look like. And I know it's the 50% off discount. So I'm going to go ahead and put in my 50 off discount and click apply. And we'll wait for this to process. Boom, discount got applied. So now I'm actually only paying $513 now instead of the full price because I put in a discount code. So that's what actually happens when the client is going through a proposal if you have everything connected that way. So let me jump back over to my other screen. I'm going to switch screens on you guys again here. 1 second, and we'll pop back over. And let's see, it should populate. Hopefully that works for you guys. Let's see. I think it's processing here. 1 second. Okay, there we go. Let me know in the chat if you guys can see that. I just want to make sure that it populated back because it kind of cut out for 1 second. So I want to make sure you guys can see we're back on the screen. All right, perfect. So that's what's happening in real time with a client. So just to revisit this one more time, proposal, empty invoice, proposal submitted. It puts the selections on there, contract invoice. So that's what's happening when you send out a proposal. Now, I want to jump to public proposals so that way you guys can understand how those work. Public proposals, and we'll actually go to an example here. Oh, before I do that, let me refresh the page so you can see. I went through everything as the client, so now you'll see that the badges updated on here. So I completed the proposal, I signed the contract, so the badges will update as the client's going through things. If you do this and you are a business owner and you're in a real account and do what I just did for a real client, it's like you're filling it out for them. So don't do it with a real client. Only use that when you're testing, because if you sign a contract, that's actually signing it for them. So don't do that. Only when you're testing, use that method where you do the private window. So let me jump into public proposals. We'll talk about those. So the only real difference between a proposal and a public proposal is the ability to share it on your website. What you're doing is you're taking a combination of a proposal and a lead capture form. We already talked about lead captures 2 weeks ago and how those create new projects. You're taking the best parts, I guess, of both of those, and you're putting them together and meshing them. So what public proposals do is it creates a hybrid between proposals and lead capture forms. It gives you the purchasing power of a proposal, and then it also gives you the project creating capabilities of a lead capture form. So what you need to do in order to make a proposal public is you need to do 4 things, and we're going to cover those here. On this proposal, you'll see that this is the exact same proposal as far as the packages go. I haven't changed anything. It's still the exact same thing. All the packages are lined up the same way. It's the exact same form. The only difference is that I'm going to take this form and I'm going to embed it on my website. So that way, if I have someone who just comes to my website and they just want to make a selection on what they're interested in, and they can just buy directly from the website, that's the difference that I'm going to add here, where I want to take this and embed it on my website. So in order to do that, you'll need to do 4 things, and I'm going to cover those 4 here. The first 3 are all pretty much the same, but I'll break it down here. On a public proposal, you have to, this is a requirement, there's no way around this. On a public proposal, you have to ask for their first name, last name, and email. So if I click into this, you'll see with a short answer box that I have it mapped to the client's first name, and it's required. You have to have it mapped to the correct area and have it required in order for this to work the right way. And you'll need to do that for first name. You'll also need to do the same for last name. And then you'll also need to do the same thing for email. So those 3 things have to be on the form in order to do this. But if you want to add more questions in here, because remember, this is the first thing that someone's filling out in order to get into Dubsado. So if you want to ask more questions like what's your guest count, what are you thinking about, all those different things, you can ask those. But at the very minimum, you have to at least do first name, last name, email, and they're all required. So those are the first 3 things. And then the last thing that you'll need to do in order to get this to share so you can embed this on your website is up at the top underneath the settings tab where we were at earlier. Down at the bottom, if you scroll past some of these other aesthetic things, you'll see something down here that says create a new project when this proposal is completed, and you'll choose yes on there. That's telling the proposal, I want to make this a public proposal now. Once you have those 4 things together, up at the top, you will now see that this share button is activated. When you click on that, it's going to give you the same type of functionality that we had with the lead capture, where you can embed this proposal on your website if you want to. You could take this direct link and you could send it to whoever you want to. If you want to email it to somebody, text it to somebody, put this on Instagram if you want to, or Facebook. This gives you the ability to take the proposal, put it anywhere you want to. Someone fills it out. It then generates an invoice, creates a project. It does everything the same, but it also brings them into Dubsado. You can't take a proposal that does not have these 3 things and share it. This will always be grayed out at the top if you don't have those 4 things. But that's how you can basically take a proposal, same thing that we have, add those elements in there, and then it becomes available for embedding and sharing that way. So that's all you really have to do to make a public proposal. It's pretty simple. The other thing that I want to cover before we wrap for today is in the settings menu down at the bottom. Once you click yes, you'll see that some options pop up down here. And the one that I want to talk about is the default workflow section. So what you can do, because remember, this is also similarly like a lead capture form. So you're getting that project creating capability with this. The other thing that you're getting is also the ability to start a workflow from this form. If you've watched the lead capture video, we talked about how public proposals can also start workflows, and we were going to wait. Today's the day we're talking about it. So if you put this on in your settings, you can apply a workflow to start once somebody fills this out. Now, one thing that we do not have with proposals yet before we wrap up is we don't have the workflow element where once someone chooses a certain answer, then it starts a certain workflow. We don't have that with proposals. We only have that with lead capture, but you could start a generic workflow from this proposal form and then maybe branch off into another workflow segment. So that's how you can use workflows with your public proposal there. Once they submit it, the workflow will then start, and then whatever actions you have set up will go from there. So that's really all that I have for today. There's not a lot with public proposals. They seem like a big deal, but really all it is just adding in those 4 things, and then you can share it. Everything else is the exact same as normal proposals.